some days we just eat the one meal a day and make it last. My mom and I, we always last to eat, make sure the others. In our family, it started off with my dad first, any of his friends second, then the babies, and then all the way up to my mom and I. And sometimes there wasn't that much to go around, but.
It's a story that you can identify with if you've been poor and abused, wondering when you'll have your next meal or your next beating. For the down and out, bouncing from a car to a tent and back again, this is your life, a hard scrabble life. But surely not the life of the leader of a distinguished private school in Honolulu. Indeed, that was Joe Rice's life. Join us as we get to know Mid-Pacific Institute's president and CEO, Joe Rice, here on Long Story Short.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox is Hawaii's first weekly television program produced and broadcast in high definition.
Aloha mai kako, I'm Leslie Wilcox. In this edition of Long Story Short, we'll meet an affable executive who laughs easily, travels in prominent circles in education, and is on a first-name basis with many influential people. You might guess that to achieve this level of success, he must have been born to comfort and attended Ivy League schools before eventually settling into his position as president and CEO of the Mid-Pacific Institute in Manoa. Who would guess that he was dealt an incredibly tough start in life? It's a long way from the migrant farm camps of California and Washington State to a graceful Manoa home and the leadership of a well-known Hawaii college prep school. But that's the journey of Joe Rice. You are a distinguished headmaster of a respected school, and you have this very comfortable demeanor and openness about you. And yet you've had this very dark and troubled childhood.
Yeah.
How much does that childhood play with your life now?
Almost every day. I've probably been spending too much time thinking about my past lately. I'm in the midst of writing a memoir about it. People have been encouraging me to. So I've been remembering a lot the past couple of years.
Is it painful?
Yeah, that's why it's taking so long to write the book.
Have you come to new conclusions and had new epiphanies thinking about this as an experienced adult?
You know, a lot of people ask me, yourself earlier and others have asked me, how did I end up getting where I'm at? And, you know, a lot of people think I was born with everything, and especially a nice house I live in and things. But I reflect once in a while on how it is that I've gotten to a position where I can help a lot of kids and I can help a school. And I kind of trace it back to my beginnings and how I became appreciative of education and what it could do for you. And I'd have to give it all the credit for getting me through to my position now. And I believe I'm a good example for kids who think there is no chance for them, that if they hear my story, they would say, well, if he can do that, I can do it.
So much of your life, I know you had a loving, hardworking mom, but in many parts of your life, adults you should have been able to trust simply weren't there for you, or weren't telling you the truth, or hurting you. How do you get over that?
Well, one, you come to those conclusions later. When you're living your life, you're pretty much focused on your brothers and sisters, and even though you fight and you do terrible things to each other all the time, they still care about each other, and they cared about me, and I cared about them. My mom was always somebody I could depend on, that if I needed an ally or somebody who would stand by me, she would be the one. And she took a lot of hurt for doing that, and she could have turned her back on me, and she didn't. So I gained strength from all of that. But I would be the first to tell you, and I've done this a number of times talking to young kids at other schools and things, about there are so many people willing to help you and and giving you the hand of friendship, are willing to lift you up, but you don't see them or you won't take it when it's offered. And at various times in my life, there have been people who have done that, whether it was a teacher, Salvation Army helping us out at Christmas time and bringing you a gift so that you could give your mom something, or the local store where you go down and you've been caught before for stealing food for your family, and this time they just come in and say, what do you need? And they give it to you. So there have been those folks all along in my life, and I know they're there for other kids. And sometimes they don't see them, or they're too much pride to take it when it's offered. But for most kids, it is offered, and they just don't see. So I try to talk to them about that, because I certainly didn't get to being the president of Mid-Pacific on my own.
Mm-hmm. You've managed to navigate through very different worlds.
I learned early about getting up at 4:30 in the morning and going to work and dragging yourself to the car, getting your kids, your brothers and sisters bundled and throw them in the car, go either watch them while your parents work or get up in the fields and work, come back, work till noon, 1 o'clock when it gets too hot to work, go to school in the tent, go home, help cook, take care of people, hope you don't get hurt, make it through the day. I learned those lessons young. So when you're in college and you're living in your car and you're eating the 6 burgers for $1 at the Arctic Circle, and you drink Diet Coke or Cola or whatever. I think it was Tab in those days, because I didn't want to get too fat. I forgot that lesson. But I did that day on and day out. It was all better than when I was growing up.
If you worked your way through college, you have an idea of what it's like to hold down a job and still do the required studies. Surely Joe Rice's rough upbringing in the fruit orchards gave him the work ethic to do whatever it was going to take to graduate from a university. But he needed to do more than work for a living and study for a degree. He needed to rise above the emotional scars, the terrible uncertainties created by lies and abuse. It's a legacy that haunts him to this day.
Tell me about your early life.
Well, let's see. I was born to a mom who told me she was 14 when she had me, but I found out later she was probably around 16. And I only found that out when I figured out what her birthday was, because she kept that hitting. I've often told people I'm 2 years younger than I actually am, because that's what my mom told me, that she lied about my birth, among other lies that she had and gave to me to protect me for some reason or another. But I'm the oldest of 12. I can name them if you want to.
What are their names?
And it's Joe, Jesse, Joyce, Judy, Jimmy, Bobby, Dale, Harold, Denise, and Homer. And the one that died about 3 days after birth was Haley. So we had a bunch of J's in a row, and then a bunch of H's, and then a few odd names in the mix, like a Denise or something.
And you were the oldest, so I assume your responsibilities grew as the family grew.
My parents, both of them, had an 8th grade education, so it was clear they weren't going to get good paying jobs unless they went back to school. And my stepfather, I learned that he was my stepfather. I thought he was my father in the beginning for many years. They became migrant workers. And so the first time I went to a school steady was starting 8th grade. I went to half a year at one school. And then 9th grade, I finally went to Ceres Union High School in California. And I finished my 4 years there, living in a house. The rest of the time, we were migrants on the road. I went to school mostly in the tent, out in the fields, and they'd send a teacher out to us. We work in the mornings, go to school in the afternoon.
So you had spotty childhood education?
No. Actually, not spotty, because you'd still go to school.
But you said half a day, or?
Half a day, but it would start like at 1 o'clock and go to 4, 5 o'clock. I actually started when I was 3 and 4. My mom wouldn't have anywhere else to send me, so they let me go and sit with the older kids in the schoolhouse, which was just a large tent, but all multi-age. So they had an elementary school tent and a high school, middle school tent. And so I just sat in the back and listened and actually learned how to read real early that way. Went to school. I went 1 year, we lived in Hood River. I actually went 1 year, 4th grade in Hood River, Oregon. I remember that. A couple other times we went about a half a year where we lived in one place and got a rental. But the other parts we were on the road and went from Lancaster, California up to Wenatchee, Washington, picking apples. So wintertime you're up north and summertime you're down south. We did that for many, many years. I took care of the younger ones when I was younger. You know, you're sitting out on the blanket under the tree, and then when they move from tree to tree, they pull you along, and you would sit there and stick the bottle in the kid's mouth or something like that. As soon as I was able to work, I was picking fruit and got pretty good at it too, to where it's better my mom start watching the younger ones than me because I do so well. But that was pretty much my younger life. My dad was an alcoholic, very abusive person.
To whom?
To my mom particularly, and me second.
Because you as the oldest, or you as the
me
stepson?
Me as the stepson, me who liked to read, me who I just didn't go and do all the stuff that the other kids were doing. I'd stay at home, I'd take care, I'd clean the house, I'd help my brothers and sisters. I did those things, and I was about as different as he could have been.
But that's a good thing, that what you were doing, right?
Yeah.
Every member of Joe Rice's large family suffered abuse at the hands of his stepfather. One night in Joe's senior year of high school, his stepfather gave his mother a particularly bad beating. The oldest son decided it all had to stop, and the events of that night would change the course of his life.
You mentioned how you're going up and down, up from Lower California up to Canada in a car, and sleeping in a car in tents.
Yeah, big station wagon.
When you were, you got yourself to college, working your way full time through college, but you used your car in a more positive. I mean, you're still living in your car, but you were going to college and living in your car.
Yeah.
How did you get to college? From the big station wagon with all the dysfunction?
My dad did another horrible thing to my mother, and it was in my senior year. I was 17, and around November of my senior year, and he came home and he beat her real bad, and left her bloody, and my brothers and sisters were gathered around her, scared, and I was hiding in the closet, just hiding. And I heard it. After he left, I went out and I got my mom and I took her in the bedroom and cleaned her up, and I told her that it wasn't going to happen anymore. And so I kept my mom with my sisters in their room, and I had them barricade the door, and then I went and got a knife, and I went to my room, and I waited. And when he came back, he was yelling for me, and
he was going to beat you up?
He had been looking for me after he beat my mom, and I was hiding in the closet. And it was one of those closets, if you don't lift up the door and turn it, you can't get in. And so he gave up and he left, and I was just sitting here. So I waited, and he came home about 4, and he came in with his, stood there in the doorway and took off his belt, and he started hitting me. And I got the knife and I went after him. And they said I stabbed him probably like about 20 some times. And my family came in and pulled him, held him down and said, "Go, Joe, go." And I ran away and hid in the vineyard near our home where we had in Middle California. And I stayed there for about 3 days. And they said he went around looking for me. I didn't hit anything. I just mangled his arm and his shoulder. And I turned myself in to a local grocery store, a little mom and pop, and I asked them to call somebody, and they called. And they put me in foster care for the rest of the year. And I finished high school, and nobody came. And then I worked picking beans in the summer, and I bought a bus ticket for Washington. And I went there, and I went to the local welfare office, and I asked for help. And they said, "Why'd you come here?" And I said, "Because it's you guys who've helped us all along. We've been on welfare most of our life." And I said it was either you or the Salvation Army. And so they found me a place to stay in this, it was like a redone house that had been put into little apartments. And they had a bathroom that they rented out, and there was a bed. So you have your sink, your toilet, and the bed. So you need to climb over all that stuff to get to the bed. And I did that, and they got me a job at the Tacoma, working for the city of Tacoma on a survey crew. So I did that for 6 months, and they worked out a deal that a certain percentage of my pay would go into a fund, and this group called Neighborhood Youth Corps would match it if I would go to college. And so I did, and they started me in at Tacoma Community College. So I got a job working at a garage, and I worked 8-hour shift after school. I got up in the morning, and I went and I cooked at the cafeteria, and they fed me in the morning. Then I go to classes, and you only take like 3 or 4 classes, so it's not like it is now where you got 6 or 7 classes. And then I would go to work, live in the place. Did that for the first year. Second year, I went to work for Button Veterinarian Hospital, and they gave me a little room off of the vet hospital, and I cleaned pens and washed all the poop up and all that junk. And they gave me a place to stay, and I did that, and still continued. That was my nighttime work after I finished at the garage.
And what kept you going as you were doing this? Because you must have been exhausted.
Yeah. You get up in the morning and you go to your job at the cook breakfast for people at the school. Then you take PE for your first class, so you can take a shower and stuff, and then you go to class. It was all about, I made up my mind that I wasn't going to be like my parents, and I was going to show my brothers and sisters that it didn't have to be that way for them. That even though I ran away and left them, I would show them that there was a way for them too.
When you've been through so much, how do you put it behind you? For many, catharsis is found in writing. In 2012, nearing a retirement age, Joe Rice has been writing to tell his story and to purge himself of the demons of his past. It's been a challenging process. Sometimes when you rip off the bandage, the wound reopens.
So you're writing a memoir about your life.
Yeah.
How do you put all of this in context and process it all for your book?
Well, it's going on 3 years because I start writing, and you won't believe this, Leslie, but when I graduated from high school, troubled as I was voted in the yearbook most likely to succeed as a writer. And because my mind was in the clouds and I lived a fantasy life, as you're living the bad news, you're dreaming of something different. And I wrote lots of poetry, and
Did you keep it?
Not too much. I sent many things away to see if anybody wanted to publish. But I wrote a lot of things that told the truth too much. And people would read it and start getting worried about what's happening at your house. And So I did that, and I wrote short stories and things. So people thought I would one day be a writer. And of course, after that, you're working every day, and you're trying to go to school, and you write lots of assignments, but you never do writing like this. So as an adult, people said, "Joe, you should. I know you want to help people. Maybe this would help." And so I'd start writing, and I'd get all gung-ho. And then my very first chapter is about hiding in the closet to kill my dad. And then I can't write again. And then and the ending chapter of the book is when I actually did try to kill him. And I fill in the middle with all the other stories. Some of them are humorous and this and that. So sometimes I can go and write a couple chapters and keep going. And other days I break down and I can't think. And I just get worried about things, and that maybe it's all going to turn for me. And
even after all this time,
that this is not really me.
Yeah, you must have something very strong inside you to have been able to handle all of what you did, and then all of what came later that was positive. I mean, just being able to, not to minimize it, but you handled a life that was so negative, and now you're handling a positive life. It seems like two different skills at play there.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one. I just get up and do it. Mm-hmm. I just think that someday I'll make a difference. I'll do something.
Did you?
I don't know what, but something.
Well, you already have, haven't you?
Well,
Peace Corps, teaching, molding minds.
I know, but those are all just stuff. Those just stuff. It's not like, excuse me. I don't know what it is I'm supposed to do.
You feel like there's something else you need to do.
Something. I don't know what.
Well, he gets up every day, goes to work, nurtures some 1,500 students at his school, minds his own children, and cares for his wife. Joe Rice still struggles with the legacy of a childhood filled with emotional and physical pain. Maybe that's why he reached out even farther to the Future Light Orphanage in Phnom Penh.
Well, you're supporting an orphan, right, in Cambodia?
I have a boy in Cambodia that I started supporting maybe like 10 years ago or something. He's now out of the orphanage, and he graduated from high school, and he's in a university in Cambodia, and I'm helping him. And he's going to be in information technology, and so that's good. And I a member of Family Programs Hawaii, and we deal with orphans and foster children, and I think that's helping a little bit.
So, but you still feel self-doubt, right?
I don't know what it is, but I don't feel like I've done what it is.
You had a life of such unrelieved pain. How did you learn how to feel joy and just find joy every day?
The best times, I don't know, when your children are born and you see them and you watch them grow up, that is a great joy. To wake up with your wife and know that she loves you, and then you got something good going, that's a joy. It's hard to express. It's kind of like you feel like something not going to go well, or something's going to happen, and so do good and ward it off.
What do you enjoy most about being the head of Mid-Pac?
Well, believe it or not, my best times are when I go over to the preschool. And you go over there because if you want to live, if you're having a bad day, just go to the preschool or kindergarten classes. And they, about 3 years ago, I must have come dressed in green, kind of like you are, and they called me Mr. Gecko. And so now these are 3-year-olds. And so they surround me and sing Mr. Gecko song that they make up. Now these kids are like 2nd grade and they still call me Mr. Gecko. And that makes you feel good.
There were times in this conversation that I could hear student crew members sniffing, fighting back tears. There were times when Joe Rice and I shed tears. The abused child who watched out for his mother and siblings grew up to have many fulfilling moments and chapters in his long, successful educational career. Yet, he's not sure this is his ultimate calling in life. To the head of Mid-Pacific Institute in Honolulu, we say mahalo for all you've done for the young people in your care. We wish Joe Rice the best in his personal quest, and we'll be on the lookout for his memoir. For Long Story Short and PBS Hawaii, I'm Leslie Wilcox. Ahui ho kako.
For audio and written transcripts of this program and all episodes of Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox, visit pbshawaii.org.
You know, a lot of people think I was born with everything, and especially a nice house I live in and things, but I reflect once in a while on how it is that I've gotten to a position where I can help a lot of kids and I can help a school, and I kind of trace it back to my beginnings and how I became appreciative of education and what it could do for you. And I'd have to give it all the credit for getting me through to my position now. And I believe I'm a good example for kids who think there is no chance for them, that if they hear my story, they would say, well, if he can do that, I can do it.